Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first official episode of the Aerosmith podcast I like to call Get Your Wings. I'm your host, Rob Marcelona, and this week we are here to talk about the impending release of the Yungblud and Aerosmith collaboration EP called One More Time. Now, on our intro episode, which if you haven't listened to that, I encourage you to go back and do so, I talked a little bit about this project just because it's what Aerosmith has been up to lately, and, it kind of highlights their ability over their illustrious and very long career to remain in headlines. Okay, so this episode, we're going to talk about where this project came from, some of the things released promotionally with it, and some of the public feedback, the talk around the project, things that we know, what we don't know, my own thoughts, what I've been seeing from others commentating on the EP, my anticipation, things like that. This is a 5-track EP entitled One More Time, which is fitting because it's mostly heavily being promoted by Aerosmith. Yungblud too, but obviously Aerosmith have not had any musical releases since 2012's Music from Another Dimension. That was their last full-length studio album of original material. Prior to that, even in the 2000s, they did not have a ton in terms of releases happening. 2004 was a blues cover album with one original, the album being Honkin' on Bobo. And 2001 was Just Push Play, which was all original material. So definitely big news in the Aerosmith world, Aerosmith camp, for them to have new music all the way in 2025. Okay, the track list we have here, My Only Angel, that's the big single. We're going to be talking about that one quite a bit here. The second track is going to be called Problems. The third track is called Wild Woman, which, interestingly enough, Yungblud premiered over one of his dates in Europe, one of his live dates, without, obviously, any of the members of Aerosmith. Sounded like an interesting track with some good opportunities for harmony, definitely some good places for Steven's voice to fit in. So that's an exciting one. The fourth track, called 1,000 Days, I believe that one is going to be a ballad. And the fifth track is going to be a new remix of Aerosmith's own Back in the Saddle from Rocks, 1976. All right, so that's the 5 tracks on the EP. So 4 new tracks, 1 remix. My Only Angel, the lead song and the lead single here. This was released after the announcement of the EP, and it's essentially, I would call it a song with pop rock sensibilities. It has a chorus that is quite an earworm. After 1 or 2 times listening to it, that's all I really needed, and that chorus was stuck in my head for a couple of days. Now, the overall quality of the song, I would say it's good, it's fair. Is it the greatest Aerosmith song I've ever heard? I don't think so. Is it the worst? I don't think that either. I think the song is composed very well. I think there's some great musical sensibility in there. I really, really enjoy the guitar riff and part that Joe Perry came up with for this one. I wish that the track leaned more into that aspect of the song, Joe's lead guitar with the rhythm section. And that's something I will say is that I feel the rhythm section on this song is fairly static and honestly a little unimpressive. They're very low in the mix and it doesn't do anything really to push the song forward. The drums are driving, but throughout the song, they don't really change much. What you're really focusing on here is the blending of Yungblud and Steven Tyler's voices, which, listen, I think their voices play quite well off of one another. And in the stories that Yungblud has been telling again in the press promoting this thing, he is stating how kind of they had competition within the studio, trying to outdo each other with what notes they could hit. And they were having quite a lot of fun with it. As a fan, that's great to hear because, as I highlighted earlier, not much has motivated these guys to get into a studio together over the past 25 years. So the fact that Yungblud had the energy to get the Toxic Twins, who are an award-winning songwriting duo within all of music, not just rock and roll. They're in the Songwriters Hall of Fame for a reason. To get those guys back in a studio together, writing multiple new songs, is definitely a feat, and it speaks to Yungblud's energy. I understand he's getting a lot of backlash for, maybe coming into a genre that he doesn't belong in or wasn't a part of. I don't know all of the guy's music, so I can't fully speak on that. Hopefully at some point I will listen a little more deeply, but I'm not understanding all of the hate. I think it's a little unwarranted. I think he's got a good voice. He's clearly got a good stage presence. So if he can produce some music that people like, I don't really see anything wrong with that. Now, as far as how he got involved with the guys, apparently it goes back to the summer. After he had released a song called Hello Heaven Hello for his most recent album that came out in June, entitled Idols, he was being hit up by multiple members of the rock community. He specifically shouts out Brian May of Queen, along with Mr. Joe Perry of Aerosmith, as people who reached out to him saying that they really enjoyed his work on that song. So for whatever reason, Yungblud was in Sarasota, and Joe has a place in Sarasota. So as he was heading there, he hit up Joe to see if he wanted to get a drink. They met up, and basically Yungblud had mentioned that he had a studio or studio time nearby, and he would really love to write with Joe. So Joe, in speaking to him, said that Yungblud reminded him a lot of Steven Tyler. And so he actually facilitated the meeting of Steven and Yungblud, which, as I think of it, and as I tell you now, it actually puts a smile on my face, because for those of you that know the type of person that Joe is and the mannerisms and all of that, he's very muted and stoic with his expression. Steven is obviously the person who is very outwardly expressive and all over the place. Joe is more cool, calm, collected. Joe mentions himself more recently in interviews that he was spending a lot of time with Steven this summer and talking to him quite a lot. Maybe he's missed him and sort of realized the mortality of not only themselves, but the band of brothers that is Aerosmith, with Steven truly recovering from these vocal injuries over the past couple of years. So it's just great for me as a fan to know that Joe and Steven, that partnership, not only in music but in life, is still strong, and that they still are bonded to one another. A lot of times with bands from this era, there are fallings out that never reconcile. So I'm glad to know that after being through the ringer, these guys are still together. At any rate, Yungblud meets Steven, meets Joe. There's some obvious chemistry. They get in the studio. They do this single, My Only Angel. It was the first one to come out of it. And after that, as Steven tells it, there were just some juices flowing between them, and they started writing 2, maybe 3. And at that point, they said, well, if we have this many, the record company is going to want an album. So there you go. They made it to 5 songs. That's your standard EP, I would say. Now, as far as the lineup, it's obviously billed as Yungblud with Aerosmith. Now, Aerosmith, as we know it, are Steven Tyler, Joe Perry, Joey Kramer on drums, Tom Hamilton on bass, and Brad Whitford on your second guitar. Now, Joey Kramer, the drummer, he had some health issues with his ankle, cardiac issues over the years, I would probably say throughout the past 15 years or so. But during his most recent issue with his ankle, he took a leave from the band, and his technician, John Douglas, took over the role of Aerosmith drummer. Now, Joey is still an official member of the band, though he has not appeared at any shows since the close of the Aerosmith Vegas run. He is still an official member. As we've learned, when there was an issue within the band, Joey wanted to get back in, and the band members were saying you need to reach a certain level to be able to play on stage. So essentially wanting him to audition for his spot back in a band that he was already in for 50 years. When this was coming about, Joey publicly served a lawsuit to the other band members. And in the lawsuit, you were actually able to read through it. I'm sure it's still online. It's very interesting, just for fans of any type of musical group, to kind of see the inner workings of this. But Aerosmith is a corporation, and the five guys all have equal stake. So regardless of who's playing the drums, Joey has a stake in what is Aerosmith. So while it's been disappointing for him to miss things recently, such as their 50th anniversary celebration at Fenway Park, or being a part of this project, unfortunately, I went in already knowing, regardless of the fact that it says the words Aerosmith, Joey Kramer is not going to be on this project. It's upsetting for me and other fans around the world, but it's something I've accepted at this point. I hope at some time or another, when Aerosmith fully gets their moment to sail off into the sunset, that Joey can make a return in some way, shape, or form, because I don't feel it's been quite the same without him, as much as I do love Aerosmith. Now, as far as the other press and write-ups about this project and the single that has been released, we are led to believe that Tom Hamilton and Brad Whitford, the other aforementioned members of Aerosmith, are on this project. However, from everything that I'm seeing and my experience with following this group, I'm just not buying it. My heart wants to buy it. I want to believe that everyone who can be active in this band is going to appear on this EP, but I'm not believing it. And here's the reason why. I'll tell you why. The photos, all of the press release photos promoting the release of this project, have only included Steven, Joe, and Yungblud. The visualizer video for My Only Angel also only included those three people. The subsequent video that was then released for a Desert Road alternate version of My Only Angel also only included those three people. None of this material, none of these promotions have included any reference, referral, photo, appearance by Mr. Sweet Emotion Tom Hamilton or the last child, Mr. Brad Whitford. And I say those two names for those guys out of respect for what they've done for rock and roll, for Aerosmith, and for Aerosmith fans. They deserved to be involved in this project. They should be consulted when writing songs in the name of Aerosmith, because they do have that gravity. The band is not the band, unfortunately, without the five guys. And I understand this is an older group and lineups change all the time. I completely understand that. But these guys, they are active, they are healthy, okay? Tom is out there doing Close Enemies. That is a group that he is currently in with other members throughout the musical community. Brad Whitford himself was on Joe Perry's most recent Joe Perry Project tour. He's obviously done Whitford St. Holmes when things are quieter in Aerosmith. Granted, they only have 2 albums, but we all know Brad loves to play and loves to stay creative. He's done the Jimi Hendrix Experience tribute band as well. So I know these guys are capable of showing up for something like this. As far as I'm concerned, there's no reason why this can't or shouldn't have been branded as a Yungblud and Toxic Twins collaboration. Now, I understand the name Aerosmith holds much more water in the rock and roll community and will cause more people to pay attention. That's ultimately why it was used, for publicity purposes. I understand that piece. And ultimately, because of what I explained about the band and their contract, all of the guys, I'm sure, will benefit, financially at least, from this project being out there. But as a longtime hardcore fan, something about it doesn't feel quite right. But I digress, because we are yet to see the liner notes. The liner notes are not going to lie. So if these guys are not credited there, that's how we'll really know for sure if session musicians were just brought in to do these other parts. Now, what I can say, as far as public comments to the contrary, Eddie Trunk, who is a known rock, I guess you would say journalist, podcaster, he used to have a show back in the day called That Metal Show, where they covered hard rock, heavy metal. He's a known media personality on the rock and roll scene. He is a big Aerosmith fan. He went to see one of the Joe Perry Project dates most recently this past summer. At those dates, he said he spoke to Brad about the EP, and Brad didn't really know much at all about it. Now, there would be no reason for Brad to say that if he were involved in its recording. So that's mostly what I would lean toward believing. But maybe Brad also was only told he'd be able to say certain things to the press. Who knows? Okay, I'm not trying to make any excuses. I am telling you genuinely what I believe, but the ultimate decision, like I'm saying, we're gonna wait until the linear notes come out. We can discuss it further then. I did mention throughout that segment that they released an alternate version of My Only Angel called the Desert Road Mix. That Desert Road Mix is stripped down, acoustic. Like I said, there's a separate video, which I do really like. It's just Yungblud, Steven, and Joe all recording together in one room. It cuts around that room. There's a breakdown where the guitar solo would be. That is a orchestral string solo. I don't know if it's a violin or viola. I am not astute enough to say which one it is, but there's a string solo in there. And the other added tidbit is that Steve Martin, the comedian actor, was asked to play banjo on this version of One More Time. And it's a pretty cool banjo part that comes in on the very last chorus. It definitely adds a little punch. I like this version of the song, I think, more than the original in a way. The one thing that I miss, which is the best part of the original song, in my opinion, is the guitar that Joe Perry provides. But something about this stripped down version just helps a little bit. I think it's because on the original version, and I'm not the only person to say this, first person to notice it, or anything like that, but on the original version of the song, there is a lot of production, whether it's pitch correction or auto-tune on Steven's voice, particularly in the verse portion. I will say in the choruses, he sounds great. There's clear age and rasp in his voice, as there should be at the age of 77. But at the front of the phrases in the choruses, you can hear this sort of glossy tinniness in his voice. And while I understand the use of it in modern music, it's going to happen. I think to the extent they used it here with someone who I consider the most technically gifted singers of all time, I think was a little unnecessary and sort of takes away from, the rawness of what is supposed to be the genre of rock and roll. Now, granted, we are far from its heyday in the 60s, 70s, 80s, but it's a culture that still breathes, and that people still love dearly. So, it's important to preserve that in a lot of ways. Now, the other thing I'd like to mention here, in terms of Back in the Saddle, they're doing a remix. There was a 30-second preview that they've released. It sounds to me so far that most of it is the original mix from 1976 off of Rocks, with some harmonizing, some ad-libs from Yungblud. Does it sound bad? No, not necessarily. But do I think if they were to do something like this, they should just re-record the whole thing with all of the members and make it a completely different version? Absolutely. Even if I would like that less, or it would sound more foreign to people's ears, I think it would be a better product. At that rate, why not write a fifth completely original song? Why do a remix or cover at all? You've already got this clear chemistry in the studio. So why not just continue to do that and record with one another? I don't know. So we'll see how that comes out. There's a 30-second preview on YouTube if any of you guys would like to listen to it. Now, one thing I forgot to mention about this lineup, Matt Sorum, former member of Guns N' Roses, he supposedly played drums on this project. Now, some people are saying that the drums on One More Time sound like AI. I don't have enough experience with AI music to confirm or deny this, but I can tell you it is pretty much, one or two loops put together for the majority of the song. Could it be AI? Yes. Do I believe that these guys want AI within their music coming out of the 1970s and coming up the way that they did? No. My heart of hearts tells me that Matt Sorum has publicly posted about helping his friends record this music, and that he was the drummer for this song and for this EP. So unlike the appearance of other Aerosmith members on this project, I do believe that Matt Sorum appears and records the drums. The other thing I want to mention when it comes to the fact of the other members of Aerosmith being on this project outside of Steven and Joe, and it's because I've seen this comment be made and the comparison be made in conversations that I've had as well, is some people might say this is similar to how Aerosmith operated when it came to the Run DMC cover of Walk This Way in 1986. Many of you may know, and if you don't, I will tell you, that only Steven and Joe went into the studio with the members of Run DMC to re-record their respective parts. However, I find this definitely to be different from the situation we're talking about today, because that was purely a cover of an existing Aerosmith song by a different group. It was a cool collaboration at the time because it brought together two genres, and really, I think the differences in both Steven and Joe's parts for that version of the recording enhance what Run DMC were trying to do, and it's interesting to see them on that version of the song. However, the rest of it was really just a cover. There was no need for additional musicians. Honestly, they didn't even have to have Steven and Joe in the studio, but they did, and the rest of that is history. In this case, this is an entire EP. An EP branded as brand new Aerosmith music in a collaboration with Yungblud. All right? So that's the reason I believe here it's completely different because this is full compositions and songs that are supposedly from the entire band that are instead being composed by 2/5 of the band. Granted, the highest songwriting contributors of the band throughout its history, and another person who's not even a part of the band. So I don't find the Run DMC era comparison fair. While I do see some of the similarities, I don't believe it to be the same caliber of an issue as I find today with what I'm talking about when it comes to One More Time. The cover features a combined logo, I guess. I don't really think it's a Yungblud logo as a skull, but it is just a skull in the middle and wings, obviously, to represent Aerosmith on either side. It's a pretty cool logo, very simple cover. Otherwise, it's just a black background, but I will say I think the logo is cool. They are releasing special vinyls. You can go on Aerosmith's website and take a look at the different releases. There's going to be an Aerosmith store exclusive that is a red vinyl. There are CDs in addition to a limited edition CD that has a spray paint insert. The band just posted this week that Steven was actually the one to spray paint those inserts. So I pre-ordered one of those. I thought that was pretty fun. I've collected CDs all of these years, and I liked that better than the original cover. It gives it something additional for a fan like myself. You know, something unique about the physical release. So I'm definitely excited. I can't wait to hear the 4 other songs that are set to come out on this. I'm glad there are just some rumblings in the Aerosmith camp. Maybe this will lead to live appearances if Steven can pull it off. I don't think it would be met with aversion from any other member, to be honest with you. But we'll see. We will see. But that is it. One More Time. Set to release November 21st, 2025, this Friday. All right, so we will be listening to that, and on one of these next episodes here, we'll run through it. We'll do a little review of everything. So I hope you guys are excited for the project. Please check it out and come to the next episode prepared, having listened, so you can come with your own opinions, and we can talk about what this is going to look like. First released under the Aerosmith name since 2012. All right, everyone, I am going to sign off here for this episode. Again, I appreciate you all listening. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you next week.